I will dominate, and this is Thorin's channel. The guy who, if I keep on associating with him, will get me banned on Twitch eventually.
The only thing unfair about gamer subs is if you don't have any, you'd like some, and you have some money. But you know what? We can rectify that immediately because you just place an order at gamersubs.gg and you can save 10% off your order, whatever it may be on the website, by using code Thorin, Thorin. Surely you know how my name is spelt by now. Spoiler, it's the name of this Twitch channel. Pretty easy to remember, right? And my Twitter/x.com. So you, as well as saving 10%, you'll also support me and my content. Quite literally, I get a percentage of it. And I would also say, if you think about like, let me think. I would also say, remember always to pop in some free samples. By the way, as an aside, if you've never tried Gamer Supps before, they do currently have a thing on the front page of the website where you can click, and I believe they'll just send you some free samples for free. But since they're covering the costs and people spoil nice things, they do say you can only do that once though, which is different as far as I know. I think if you're doing like an order and then you add in some free samples, you can do that each time as far as I know, and just get try some more flavors. But if you want them to just send you some free samples and cover everything, and then you don't have to pay anything whatsoever, then if you do it more than once, they say they will absolutely cancel your orders and they will sort of fuck you up in a way. So, but I think that's totally justified. So if you've never ever tried it at all, you could also potentially, even if you broke, go and do that, but just only do it once. Don't be an arsehole. So I will now do a breakdown I threatened to do. Obviously, I talked about it on Summoning Insight, which is when they did the World Straw for Swiss, right? I hate World Straws anyway because they're always unfair. Riot always insists on things like refusing to put guardrails, like real seeding, just for stupid political reasons. Like, well, who can really say who's better of LCK and LPL? You already did, bozo. You took slots away from the West. So as a result, you've already said they're better. Now that you committed to them being better, how about reach between your legs? See those nuts there? You're meant to use those to be a fucking man. That's where your testosterone comes from. So how about use them nuts? And since you've already committed to LPL and LCK being better than the West, why not then rank the fucking teams as better as well, you moron? Yeah, every now and then you can obviously take a G2 or a TL at their peak, maybe in spring, and you can put them up over some of the bottom LPL and LCK teams. If you do that as a general rule, you can't go wrong with these seedings. At that point, you're almost like 95% likely to be right on any given year because let's be real, we've now established through hard-fought play and experience through over a decade that absolutely LEC is never going to be better than these regions. LCS could never have even been better than them and was never even better than Europe. I don't care what the results of Season 4 Worlds were and Kaboom winning a BO1. Like, we already know these things. You can debate who's better off LPL and LCK. Certainly, that's why it maybe even would be interesting to factor in some elements of MSI, or if there had been an EWC and you wanted to just use that for form, you could consider it. But the problem is Swiss itself. I always say this. Swiss is better, as you'll see when I show some of the past World Straws. It's way better than the old World system because I always point out, even though people don't get it, that was objectively almost the worst system you could design to actually get, for example, the top 8 teams in the tournament to the top 8 of the playoffs. In fact, some draws meant it was impossible to get the top 8 teams in the world to the top 8 of the playoffs. Now, actually, as a quick aside, I'm not a maths nerd, but when people like Tommy Lurpis in Counter-Strike have run the numbers on how like unseeded or basic seeded Swiss work, actually sometimes in simulations it does end up that if you had the top 8 ranked teams in the world, one of them wouldn't get through because of the way like they'd have to play matchups against each other and eventually one of them would knock each other out. Now, even so, if you can get 7 out of 8 into the top and you do it right, that sounds good. The problem is this is like unseeded, badly seeded. It's not unseeded, it's not seeded how I'd like specifically. It's using like a weird sort of almost a tier. Actually, no, that can't be true. It must be only seeded based on the pool seed, like finishing first in a major region, because if you look who they play, you're going to see how insanely unfair. If this was any form of real human-based or ELO-based seeding, it would be impossible. Even the new Riot seedings that everyone's ranking, the power rankings that everyone's crying about are way better than this seeding. Go and take those, put 1 to 16 with the teams that are in the tournament, and just do 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15. Go like that, and you will end up with better seeds and a better draw than this, I'm telling you. Now, as I said on my betting show, I do think a lot of the seeding was good. So if we go and look, I do think in general most of the matchups are fine. Like BLG plays Mad Lions, that's okay, they're the best Chinese team. Mad Lions came from Plains, they're the 3rd seed from Europe, that's all good. Damn one against Fnatic I would have an issue with, but we'll keep going. FlyQuest versus GAM is a fucking atrocity, that is absolutely insane. You have G2 against Pain Gaming is a bit sus when you consider that some of the top teams play literally other contenders, and G2 is getting to just play, even though they're top seed, is getting to just play Brazil from the play-ins. You have Gen G against Weibo. That is already a nightmare. Maybe the worst one on paper. I actually missed that when I was doing the betting yesterday until I went to the bets. Handball Life against PSG is fine. That's actually quite reasonable. You could maybe say Handball Life should have a slightly, but maybe they should have had Pain instead of PSG, but whatever. It's the same sort of a range, isn't it? LNG TL's pretty bullshit when you consider LNG wasn't a top team from the LPL in terms of placings, yet they got TL, who isn't even... I mean, you could even argue they should have a worse seed than that, maybe. But I don't know. Maybe that's in the right range. I feel like if you did again 1-16, wouldn't they be closer to the middle? Wouldn't that be more like an 8 against a 10 or a 9 or something, which is more in the range? Yeah, and those are the matchups. And obviously, wait, I'm missing one here. What did I miss? I missed Team Liquid against Top Esports, which is the other absolute war crime atrocity. Like, whoever made this list, fuck you and everything you stand for and everything you think is important in esports, because that is literally the final of EWC. And if you don't know, Gen G against Weibo is the 2 second place teams from summer. These are fucking insane best of ones. So let's start there, shall we? What utter fucking bollocks it is that we live in a world where simultaneously, like Gen G against Weibo, unironically, would probably on paper be expected to be like either a quarterfinal or maybe even a semi-final. And there's a universe where Weibo's pretty clutch, like you saw in the LPL playoffs, where absolutely that could be a final. That could be the final of Worlds, and it's the opening BO1. Same with TS Top Esports. Right? Look, I'm not going to say T1 can win Worlds. I think they're like not even in dark horse status for me. It's only like historical aspects and like things you think about, intangibles. I think if you watch in the server, there's no reason they should win Worlds. But Top Esports is a dark horse to win Worlds. This could also be a quarterfinal, possibly a semi-final. Why are semi-finals matchups, like likelihood, actually the opening 2 matchups? Because think about it, these matches don't exist in isolation. We're all in one giant group called the Swiss system, right? So since we're all in one giant group, matchups we have also affect the next round 2 matchups. And remember, the first 2 rounds are just BO1s. Then the round 3, depending on where you are, if you're in the 2-0 or the 0-2 group, becomes best of 3, and then it keeps going like that. And obviously the round 5 is always best of... round 4 and round 5 are going to be the ones that are always best of 3 because they're the 2-2 and all the 2-1 and 2-2 games and all that jazz. Now, a few points to make here. So first of all, specifically these matchups, those are horrific. That's actually so unfair to these 2 teams. Then it's collectively unfair to these teams a second time because remember, Gen G can beat... let me see here. Gen G could beat, it depends. Look, I'm thinking Gen G is going to beat Weibo, and I think, personally, Top Esports will beat T1. So Gen G in the next round, also because of how stupid Swiss is, they could play rock-hard opponents like that, and then the next round, they could also draw each other. So you could have to play Weibo as Gen G, then play Top Esports in the next round. Similarly, in the 0-1, because of the unseeded nature of this dog shit, once you get past this round especially, then you end up in a scenario where they can also play each other. So you can be Weibo, take the dick from Gen G. You can be Top Esports. You can be T1 rather, and lose to Top Esports, who were demons across most of summer. And then in the lower bracket, you might have to play. Weibo might have to play T1. By the way, the cause of those teams were the World Finals last year. That shouldn't be used for seeding now, but I'm just showing how insane this fucking system is. And then whoever loses that game, because someone has to lose a game when you're drawn against each other, one of those 2 teams, who, let's face it, would both be top 8 or 9 at this tournament, one of those teams, potentially 2 of them, if they got drawn like that, one of those teams, if they got drawn like that, could quite literally be 0-2. You only get 3 tournament lives in Swiss. You're 0-2. You've lost 2 of your tournament lives. Not only that, you've lost it in BO1, the easiest place to lose your tournament life, after 2 rounds of the tournament. And what? Because of your fault? Because you're playing? No, because of the draw. Because the draw refuses to give you fair opponents, appropriately scaled, and build up and build through the system of how it works overall. When they use Swiss system in chess, you think they do it purely unseeded? I actually shouldn't talk about that. I don't know about chess, but I'm going to go ahead and guess they don't. That would be my guess. Then also, and you can have draws in chess, can't you? Then you've also got the factor that, as I just said, think about the contrast. At the same time, Gen G has to potentially beat like a semi-finalist or a dark horse to win the tournament in Weibo. FlyQuest, Whippo and them are just like, la, 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 la. They play GAM, who no one even has having a chance to make top 8. Even D+, who obviously had times they looked good, but could never on paper, aside from that first match in the regional, beat a top 3 team. Even they get a hard opponent because they get Fnatic, which is actually like the second seed out of Europe. And for Fnatic, that's also nonsense that they get down D+. What? That's actually the weakest of the Korean teams in theory overall. Like, I do think the intangibles will matter for T1. I think D+ doesn't have the intangibles to go too far. They can maybe make quarterfinals. I'd be shocked if they make semis. That would probably mean an insane performance from Showmaker, Aiming, and maybe even Lucid just not having any choke factor at all when it comes to Worlds. So the idea Fnatic gets to play them is insane. Like, why does Fnatic deserve that, but then Weibo deserves to play Gen G? And T1 deserves to play top esports. What's the fairness going on here? Similarly, at the same time as tournament favourites like Gen G play Weibo, G2 just gets to start off Bing chilling with Pain who have no fucking early game. Like, give me a break. This is fucking bollocks. Then consider this, I just said it there. Since I'm focusing on elite teams here to show you the extremes of this system. Since they're elite teams, I saw an idiot on Reddit, I might get to it in a Petty Grievances or Thorin vs Reddit, who was going, well, it's actually better to play the top teams earlier on because then you can't draw them later in the Swiss system. Other way around, dumb fuck. Like, if I'm actually either of these teams, in theory though, the favourite, if I'm the favourite, and we're thinking, because we're talking about seeding, about the favourite coming into the first round where you can seed, for the favourite, it is worse to play another top team first because it's BO1 and absolute, and we haven't even seen a game yet, by the way, from some of these teams in this meta, but that is the easiest time to lose in a BO1, especially in League of Legends. You do a Baron flip, you do a fucking Soul flip, you just get like a fucking crazy gank, someone just gets slightly OP and gets like an extra kill off, or gets a fucking pike ult off or something. Like, there's so many things can turn a fucking game, and you're going to let that happen, and then it's worse that you don't meet again, because now, when you go to the 2-2 game as a favourite team, maybe now a scenario happens where you could have played Weibo or you could just play BLG in that game. And suddenly you have to play BLG because you can't play Weibo, and BLG beat you in a BO1, and now you have to play BLG in the best of 3 as Gen G. And if you lose that, the other team that could probably win Worlds, you're just out of Swiss system. See ya, fuck you. You have to play the finals in a best of 3 early on. It just fucking sucks. If you're the top teams, you'd rather it was seeded properly in the BO1s, so that in the BO3s is where you start playing the other elite teams, so it's a proper match with proper draft and ability to come back, etc. And then that's where you're going to get a fair route. Now, obviously, I understand it's my fucking struggle in life, isn't it? There is nothing fair in life. Fair is when someone like me has the power to make it unfair or anything I want, and I choose to grant you a grace that is fairness. I choose to make it a well-seeded, structured system. Riot doesn't have to do that, and Riot is like a cult that just thinks they're gods and everything they think is correct and everything else in esports was wrong, and we're all stinky dum-dums who know nothing, even though magically over the years they have to eventually keep changing all their formats, decisions and rules, so they become more like checks notes. What we already had done in esports and what we told you from day one, from 2014 onwards on Summoning Insight, was the way you should do it. So, just the usual, another day ending in a Y in the paradise that is Riot Games League of Legends. I will now go and look at some past examples of world draws. So we'll go to Swiss last year, and then we'll do some of the actual groups, and I'll show you how unfair it's always been at Worlds. So, in 2023 Worlds, right, you need to see, like, this can help because it does that, but it's actually better if you just do the pool, because that says pool, but people get lost on that one. So what you need to do here is you go to main event. So you see here, we've got the pools. Remember, that's how seeding is done. Now, last year for Swiss, at least finally they went to a 4-pool system where, again, they were able to differentiate between people. Before, they used to have the nightmare of the pool 2, which was the most unfair thing I think I've ever seen in esports seeding ever, because it really did treat sometimes like AHQ as being equal to like Rocks Tigers, for fuck's sake, or something like that. Something insane like that. Like, that can really happen in that system. So you look at the pools here, right? We're going to use these 4 pools, and then we're going to go look. Who are we playing in the first round? So Gen G plays GAM. That's totally fine. That's one of the favourites for the tournament, playing one of the worst teams in the main event. That's totally legit. JDG plays BDS. Okay, that's one of the favourites for the tournament, the best team in the world at the time, arguably. Hadn't lost a best of 5. And out of these 4 teams, they're playing BDS. That's also, actually, we've got Locky here. It ends up being a good one. Now, it would have been a nightmare if either of these 2 teams, as far as I can tell, they could have drawn this. Like, what if Gen G had drawn Weibo there? By the way, Weibo ended up being finalists at this tournament. And what if JDG had drawn D+? D+, by the way, could potentially have been a top 8 team instead of an RG if they actually hadn't had to play all Korean teams in terms of, like, the elimination. Oh, no, they lost to G2. I guess that one's harder, but they could potentially still be a top 8 team. But anyway, that would still be harder than GAM or BDS. So you actually got lucky on those 2. Those 2 are fine. Then we go to LNG. Remember, they were smurfing in summer. They had a massive globe. They play Fnatic. So let's go to here. LNG was a 3rd seed and plays Fnatic a 2nd seed, that's also fine. Because if I did a 1 to 16, wouldn't I end up with Fnatic and LNG something like, wouldn't Fnatic be like 10th or something, and LNG might be like, well, here's the problem. Let's be real. I'd say that'd be like 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, maybe 3rd or 4th, let's say. So because we have to let Gen G in. Let's say 3rd, 4th, or 5th. So 5th playing 10th, that's a little bit off, but okay. I'd say that's slightly off, but at least it's a reasonable matchup. NRG playing Weibo is fucking insane. Because I get it that they won LCS, but we're still pretending last year that NRG are of equal value to the other teams here. Now, not entirely, because I believe they did do something like make Korea and China like have the better seed in this portion or something. But even so, the idea that you're giving better seeding preference to NRG over like Billy Gaming, T1, KT Rolster, LNG, this is mental. This is already mental. So you've absolutely, I think, objectively already failed. And subjectively, it's a fucking nightmare. Like, this is actually a train wreck. It's so disrespectful to teams to do this after they have to grind the whole year to get to this point and to earn those accomplishments in their splits and to look fantastic so that we humans with brains and eyes can see that they're much better than an RG. So I think that already is a travesty right there. Then you have T1 plays TL, right? That's not insanely bad. Again, wouldn't they be like top of the bottom teams and bottom of the top teams, if you know what I mean? I mean, TL wasn't that good that year. Remember, this isn't the lineup that had the change up. It had like Pure Chic, etc. So that's not too terrible, but still, if you're T1, it's insane you've drawn them. Like, that's pretty good. This is where it gets really unfair. So BLG, this is before Knights last year, remember? This was the EGAO lineup. They had an amazing spring, a pretty strong summer, but they just fell off in the playoffs. Now, their prize for that is you get KT Rolster, the team that came into the summer playoffs of LCK with the #1 seed. Every player voted All-Pro LCK. That is fucking insane. That's another example of 2 dark horses to win Worlds and 2 potential semi-finalist teams, obviously only BLG made it there, having to play in the first matchup. It's so unfair, it's insane. Meanwhile, Weibo gets NRG. I've already shown you that one, actually. Am I missing anything here? Oh, Cloud9 gets Mad Lions. That's also insanely unfair. Cloud9 is here. Mad Lions is here, right? If I'm ranking these teams here, how is it that on paper, because here's the thing, I know this team won Europe, but as you found out from all the Kazi interviews, they were shit in scrims. I think they were better than TL. But the idea that like Cloud9, in theory, by the way, I think the worst of these 4 teams, but it's debatable with Fnatic. The idea you get the best or second best of the pool 3 teams is fucking bonkers. Logically, I'm sorry, this is why this pool system is fucked. First of all, KT Rolster should be in your spot, and then they should be drawing you probably. Or it should be like KT Rolster there, and they get Mad Lions. And then it should be like LNG there, and they get TL. But instead, we get Cloud9 against motherfucking Mad Lions. That's an absolute piss take. And then that was them all. So that was the first round. And then what happened after that first round because of how unfair they all were? Now, sadly, I usually on Swiss systems get fucked in the eyes, but actually they've even changed it on Liquipedia, so shout out on Counter-Strike, which is normally they make it green and red in a way where I can't see between them. But I actually believe I can actually see here, I can see the difference because I can see the red and I can see the green. So actually they've done a good enough palette skill because I'm colourblind. So in the first round, Gen G beats GAM and they get T1. Now, that's not that insane. I know T1 was the second best team. Look, it is insane in the sense that you probably shouldn't be able to meet in the second round if you both beat your opponents. It probably should be like Gen G against them. We'll pick someone else who won a first opening match. So what we'll do is go and look at the actual Swiss here. Wait a minute. Oh, it says it there, right? Okay, so if we look at someone who won the first round, why can't Gen G, for example, play Weibo? That's much fairer than playing T1. T1 was the second best Korean team at this time. Gen G against T1, much fairer. Let's see. G2 beats Damwon and their prize is KT. Well, out of teams who won the first round, that's actually probably unfair because elsewhere, C9 got to beat Mad Lions. So you can see it already fucks up the next round. Similarly, for the 0-1s, let's look at the teams that were unfair that had to play. So we had BLG, KT Rolster. So when KT Rolster lost that match, they had to play D+, another Korean team next. Not, for example, GAM. Meanwhile, if you were NRG and you lost your match to Weibo, you just went down and you went, oh, thanks. I guess I will go and play Team Liquid. That's fucking mental. See how unfair these first 2 rounds are? It just fucks up both aspects. Then we'll go to 2022 when we were back with the old pool system. Though I will point out, I think the insane thing already in the pools here is that DRX, yes, the fluke last place team from Korea, is a playing team below GAM Esports. Below Flying Oyster, who's in pool 2 for fuck's sake. Below 100 Thieves. Are you taking the piss? I would say it's debatable if DRX should even... Look, I would put them below Rogue because Rogue won summer. And I'd maybe have to say, if you win LCS, maybe you get to be higher than the 4th seed in Korea, but that's about it. I think you should be pool 3, probably. RNG, not only the MSI winners and champions of spring, they weren't even terrible in some of these, weren't a top team. They had the fall off. The idea they're in play-ins is fucking absurd. It's actually absurd. But if you don't know, RNG were the MSI champions and DRX wins this world from fucking world. Now, look, they did remove that, so they weren't Korean and LPL teams in the play-ins. But why were they ever? Why were they ever in there? And then GAM Esports there, shut the fuck up. And this is obviously egregious as fuck. Like, spoiler, now instantly you have another thing that's really unfair, which is as well as you can be a top seed and get fucked by getting like a really, like obviously you could be JDG and you could get Damwon as your first opponent. By the way, this did happen in the zone. You can get Damwon, right? Who's still fairly strong. You can get EDG, reigning world champions, by the way. Not only can you get that matchup, although I guess at this point you can't get EDG if you're JDG, you can get if you're Genji because you couldn't do the regions, which also makes it unfair, by the way, when you go and look at it. You might like it for viewership, but it makes the seedings unfair because sometimes there's no option to get the team that you should get or the seeding you should get, and so you get to have an easier opponent by what's left out of you flip a coin between two teams, for example. Now, what makes that insane is the other way around. It's insane too. Say I am a shit team. Say I'm actually like GAM and I get drawn against JDG. It's like, well, fucking hell, I can't win that match, can I? But then one of my other teams down here, let's say 100 Thieves, who is the only vaguely comparable team to GAM in this pool, they just get Flying Oyster, who's a higher seed, but they're actually favoured on paper to beat. That's already unfair as fuck. Both in terms of 100 Thieves can get a winnable game, not from style, just from they're probably a better team. But then GAM gets an impossible game and we're in the same position. Riot doesn't know what the fuck they're doing and never did. We told them a million times over. So if you look at the pools, they did end up making... taking teams from to make the groups. Let's go and look at them. So we'll go from the perspective of pool 1 and we'll go down like that. So we'll go with JDG, number 1 team in the world from the LPL, champions of all the splits and the MSI. They never lost a best of 5, headed for the best season ever potentially. You could still argue maybe they had it. Just most people are going to pick a world's winner. So they're down here. Right, so from pool 2, the hardest team I could draw, because in this world I can't draw top esports because I'm from my region. So the hardest team I can draw is obviously T1, right? That would be the nightmare. The second hardest is obviously G2. And the third hardest, the least hard, is obviously Flying Oyster. So in a dream world, I want Flying Oyster if I'm JDG. And quite frankly, if I'm number 1 seed, aren't I obliged to get the worst seed out of pool 2? Isn't that how seeding should work? Shouldn't JDG automatically get the free win of Flying Oyster? They don't, of course. Because what they get as their pool 2 team, do you remember? They get G2. Now, look, G2 didn't do very well here, but if you remember this group, everyone was in these games. G2 had games they could have won. EG had games they could have won. There are loads of games that were close in this group. It was a nightmare. This was the group of death, essentially. This is also one as well, but this is the ultimate group of death in theory, because even the 2 Western teams are actually the ones that have an outside chance with the right style and the right type of game to get out and to win BO1s. So JDG just gets completely fucked by this group. They just happen to 5-1 it anyway, and they just lost 1 to Damwon. Then you go to pool 3, right? Again, I can't have EDG. So obviously the worst team instantly and immediately is, without even debate, is Damwon. That is the worst team I can draw as the number 1 team in the world, Damwon. Other than that, because I can't have EDG, which also is unfair, by the way, but they shouldn't even be in this pool. The other 2 is like, look how easy it is, right? If I get Damwon, I might lose a game to them. I did. I might even lose twice. If I get 100 Thieves, maybe they could fluke 1. Very unlikely, probably 2-0 them. If I get GAM, I'm probably just 2-0ing. So do I get GAM? Remember, the best team in the world. Do I get 100 Thieves? Fuck you. You get Damwon. You get an outside, like, look, I'd say there wouldn't even be a dark horse at this point in time, but like a team that's going to make playoffs. You get a playoff team as your 3rd seed. You already got G2, like a borderline playoff team for the 2nd seed. Already JDG's been really unfairly treated. But you know what? Give them a break. Surely life, because we're just allowing the fates Just fucking random chance to decide what we're going to get out of this fourth one, except we've already rigged the table by saying it can never be RNG, but obviously should never be RNG anyway, right? Now, of the teams in Pool 4, follow me on this one, guys. Obviously, the nightmare would be, since I can't have RNG to get DRX, but I can't get DRX, I've got Damwon, and remember, 2 teams in the same region can't be in the same group. So since I can't have DRX, it's literally a coin flip. Do I get Fnatic or do I get EG? Now, literally, if you look at those 2 teams, yeah, in this scenario, quite comparable, right? Like, look, Fnatic hadn't won that year, but they were a strong team in terms of, like, skills. You look at EG, they had won, but then they had some laning phase issues and some younger, inexperienced players. Now, of those 2 teams, I would argue EG actually was the better team. I think Fnatic had, like, the chance to smurf, as they did in, like, the game against EDG and T1, where they could have won both. They had the chance from some of their players to do it, but they were really disconnected that year. That was the one where, like, the bot lane was way better than people remember. And then I thought it was actually, like, jungle and top had their problems. EG probably is the second worst one to get, but that's because there's only 2 there. You got EG, but then again, as I said before, why the fuck are these playing teams but Gam and 100 Thieves up here and Flying Oyster? Like, it's so unfair. So you get an insane fucking group. And what did you do to deserve that group? You won every best of 5, you won MSI, and you won both LPL splits, but Riot rigged the table so certain things couldn't happen, but then said, hey, I wouldn't be want to see to be rigging things and deciding who's better, so have at it, random element of chance. And the random element of chance said, fuck you, JDG. But JDG still managed to get through anyway. Then you go to, let's go to the other group. So obviously the other big favourite for the tournament was Gen G, champions of Korea. They had at this point in time since 2022, so they lost spring when T1 had that undefeated split and looked mega with the brand new lineup. Then they had, let me think. That was the year that obviously MSI wasn't 2 teams going, so Gen G didn't get to go that year. Then you had Summer Split, where they were the champions, and then you came into Worlds, they were a potential favourite. They obviously had a very good lineup. They had Peanut, etc. back then. So you go to them, right, logically, from Pool 2, right, obviously, if I really wanted to, and I'm not going to do that, I'd have to do it where once I've done JDG, some of theirs, I should do it like the World's Draw, look what you can get next. But I'm going to look at what's possible. So again, if I'm Gen G, please give me Flying Oyster. It's the most obvious one. If not them, can I have G2, please? I can't have T1. Top Esports, last of all, please. That would be the most unfair one I can draw. I've done everything I can. Not as well as JDG, but I've done everything I can as a Korean seed to get to the number 1 seed. Oh, wait, what's that? I get RNG. Oh, sorry. I get Flying Oyster. Perfect. That's the one time it's worked. The one time it's worked, but don't worry, because of how whack the pool system is and the seeding system, we're still going to get fucked, even though we start with the best possible draw. For Gen G, that's the best possible draw. I'd even argue, if I'm already putting these teams should never be in these pools. Actually, JDD should already have gotten Flying Oyster, so I should probably have to get G2 at that point in time. But I don't. I get Flying Oyster. By the way, that's unfair to JDG. But don't worry, when we even out the pools, what a nightmare the different region things being in pools is, that ends up meaning I still get fucked at the end in some ways anyway. But let's see if it's as hard as it can be. Because obviously, I think for this one, it wasn't. So you got Flying Oyster there. Then for Pool 3, I can't have Damwon because they're Korean. So obviously, the number 1 team I must avoid is EDG. They're the reigning world champions. That is a nightmare. Of the other 2, I'd rather have 100. I'd rather have Gam than 100 Thieves. But at least they're not damn one, right? And at least I already avoided top esports. So you go down and we got 100 Thieves. Perfect. You know what? That's not Gam, but then again, you could argue, I mean, it depends how you'd go on. I guess you'd go like 1st to 16th. You wouldn't really go like 1st to 5th, whatever. That's the point of, the other thing is, this doesn't have any logic, this system of how we're doing it. So if you go to this, actually 100 Thieves is one of the acceptable ones. So we'll say that's okay. So far, we're doing a great job if we're Gen G. This is awesome. We're going to get one of the best groups ever for a top seed. Because at this point, right, if we just go ahead and draw, I mean, obviously at this point in time, we can't have a Korean. We can have Fnatic or RNG is our last one. Mate, if we coin flip and get Fnatic, this is one of the easiest groups ever, which itself would be unfair, because if we get a very easy group, that means elsewhere someone got a very hard group, like JDG. So you know what? At the end, suddenly their easy group fucks up and becomes like a medium strength group. Because at the end, they get RNG. From the plains, they get the fucking MSI champions and LPL champions of Spring as their worst team, according to Riot's pool system. Because they designed this system, and I've seen it fuck up every Worlds, as I'm going to show you, and that's what I end up with my group. So in my group, I'm not guaranteed to win. In fact, as you saw, I actually did go 1-1 with RNG. But let's be real, at least in this group, we're both very likely to get out. So that's a medium strength group. But you saw, even though it was getting good, at the end it fucked up completely. Then if you're Rogue, look, you shouldn't even be in this pool. It's actually debatable if you should even be in pool 2, but I'd have maybe put you 8th in pool 2. Cloud9, I'd have probably had you 9th or 10th. But let's look from these pools. Now, if we're Rogue, again, obviously we want this. We can't have Fly G2 because they're from our region. So the nightmare, we've got a 1 in 3 chance, if it was really like that, of getting 2 teams that are going to smash us and can win worlds potentially even. So who do we get as Rogue? Winners of Europe. Well, we get top esports, don't we? Right, that's actually, I would say, the hardest team to get. It's debatable because at the time, people obviously thought like top esports pretty strong. You could argue maybe T1 is stronger because, yeah, T1 has the clutch factor. They've even played fairly well this year. Obviously, they were champions. Actually, I'd say T1 is the best. I'm doing their final set. T1's the worst one you can get. The second worst out of the 3 is top esports. Then we'll go, and by the way, by just looking from the favourites, you see how the seeding is fucked up. Once I've shown you that, I don't have to really show you as much from like the low seeds, even though I could and I did earlier. Then lastly, if you're Cloud9, obviously again, the dream is Flying Oyster, G2, you want to avoid these 2. What did you get in the end? Cloud9 got T1, that's the second worst one you could get. Oh, that's actually the worst one you could get. Then we'll go quickly for Rogue elsewhere. Rogue, I obviously can't have, there's no Fnatic here, so I can't have any of these teams. I really need to avoid EDG and Damwon. As long as I do, I've got a shot, right? I did get a hard seed, a second best in top, but it evened out overall because I got GAM here, and people thought they would be 4th. They actually ended up, if you look at how the tournament went out, being better than 100 Thieves. So that ended up being a reasonable draw for me on Rogue, but if with these pools, I should never even have access to it. Then my last one, it's like Gen G all over again. I think I've got a pretty good group here, guys. I've got T1. I've got top esports. They're going to be hard to beat, but I've got GAM. Boys, if I get EG as my last one, I'm getting out of groups. But on paper, actually top Rogue was never meant to get out of groups because of these seeding, because they got DRX, a Korean team from Plains that was treated as identical as Fnatic and Evil Geniuses. And so Rogue got a group that actually they shouldn't have gotten out of. On paper, you're not supposed to, as a Western team, unless you're like with caps or perks, beat teams like DRX and Top. And if you remember, Rogue beat all of them. They actually swept the group in the first round. And so they got out and they got top 8 over top esports. People, some might say maybe Tian won the Dade Award, but that's actually become, at the end, it went from being like an all right group to an unfair group at the very end. Then the last one we'll do quickly, Cloud9. If we go look here, actually, they already, I can tell, there must be one of the ones that got an easier group than they should have as a top seed. So Cloud9, obviously we want this one, but instead they end up getting T1. That's basically the hardest one you can get. Then the next round, since we can't have Damwon, we need to avoid EDG. They're the hardest ones. We got them as well. Then in the 4th one, we got Fnatic, but that's because that's all that's left over at that point in time. It can't be AG, so we have to get Fnatic. But then again, that's not unfair for Cloud9. They should never have been 4th. That's unfair for people like T1 and ADG. Why the fuck are they being subjected to playing against each other as bad seeds and then having Fnatic drop? Like, essentially, in that scenario, assuming Cloud9 was actually a good number 1 seed, that means just like the 2023 one I showed you with JDG's group, they have 2, 3rd and 4th seeds in terms of like Cloud9 and Fnatic. If you're ADG and T1, you have teams that could potentially get the 1B or 1 upset. That doesn't mean they'll get out over you, but it means it fucks up your, like, coming first place. It fucks up a 3-way tie, all sorts of shenanigans like that. So again, what a shit system, right? Then we'll go to 2020. Wait a minute, wasn't I just on this? Maybe I didn't click the button. Then we'll go to 2021 Worlds. This was the 4-seed system. Let me just double check something. When did they actually start the 4-pool system? Oh, there you go. Oh, it was actually apparently in 2020 they began the 4-pool system. So in this one, same scenario again. Obviously, you look here, champions of summer LPL was EDG, but I think most people would have had Damwon as the best team in the world. Not only the champions of both splits this year, they were in the MSI final, it was RNG they lost to, who obviously didn't win LPL summer and can't be in this pool because of the right system. So actually, if we go to EDG, they should be the second best team in theory in the tournament. A lot of people had them like 3rd or 4th in their likelihood to win the tournament. I told you, I picked them from the quarterfinals onwards to win the tournament. If we look at EDG, in pool 2, we obviously can't play FPX, so the worst team we can draw easily is Gen G. In theory, this is 2021. That was where Fnatic did like a miracle run through playoffs, remember, with Whippo's jungle. And Fnatic obviously did end up, it turns out, after we know this, not being able to use upset and all that jazz. 100 Thieves was all right. This is where they kind of won summer in a surprise. But They did, and obviously NAC didn't get to be top 8. PCS did, because if you remember, PSG Talent at MSI made top 4. And by the way, almost won that game against RNG, wasn't it? So that's actually even made the seeding potentially unfair or fair, depending on what you want to count as that. I don't know why because what if they hadn't won PCS? Then the other PCS team would get to go there just because a different team did well at MSI. So whatever. So in theory, we want to get Fnatic or 100 Thieves. Either's probably okay, but in theory, on paper, you're supposed to say NA is better, so maybe Fnatic's was, who knows on that one. So we want to get 100 Thieves or Fnatic. EDG gets 100 Thieves. Okay, that's good so far. That's good. That's not a bad seed. So we're getting an all right group so far. Then in the third pool, RNG are the champions of Summer. This is the one where Zhao, who was top player, was the best top player in the world, playing Lucian all the time. Obviously, T1, this is one of the years where they were a bit more sus. Remember, they had the lineup with Canna, but then the rest of the team that you know, and they didn't have the coaching staff you think of, but they had Canna instead of Zeus at the time. I think Zeus has been the best player overall in the time they've had the other lineup. They were sort of on the rise again. And then you had Rogue when they were the inspired lineup. And you had TL, where it was the one with Jensen, where basically, let's say I had a little hand maybe in Lijat getting fired. So you had that one where it was just a good team that could have won the splits and didn't. So in theory, as EDG, we've got 100 Thieves. So that means we can't have Team Liquid. That means we must get Rogue here. It must be Rogue. Because if it's T1 or RNG, the group's going to get, and obviously can't be RNG, so it can only be Rogue or T1. Please let it be Rogue. Because if it's T1, my group just got way harder. What's that? It's T1. So even though I got a nice draw here, I've been fucked on this draw. I've gotten actually the hardest one I can even get. Then we go to the last one. You know what? I've got T1. I've got a good one first. Obviously, my dream here is give me Detonation Focus Me. I mean, the idea of Detonation Focus Me is treated as being identically equal to LNG and Hanwha. It's fucking mental. It's mental, mate. If I can't get them, maybe give me Cloud9, which had to make that miracle run to the Worlds themselves. This is the one where Hanwha has Chovy, so I'd rather not have them. They were a regionals team. This is the one where LNG isn't the team you think of with that. They had Icon, but Tarzan was good. Arle was getting some level up. I thought Light was a bit of an issue there, and I1D was a meme, but they're still an LPL team. So obviously, for the last one, we please give us Detonation Focus Me. Thankfully, we do. So it's a rare case, even though you get fucked on this one, in the end, it sort of evens out, and actually you end up with an easier group. But you are a second seed in theory, or first seed for me. So that group ends up fine. But anytime a group ends up fine, one group's going to end up super hard, and groups end up super easy. Well, if I'm one of the favourites, shouldn't I get one of the super easy groups maybe? So then we go to the other one, Dam 1. This video could be as long as I want it to be. Dam 1 is going to play, this is the mega lineup where everyone was talking about if they win this Worlds, Khan gets his Worlds, probably should have. And then Canyon and Showmaker, then Dam 1, maybe they're a dynasty to rival T1, and are Canyon and Showmaker the greater, stronger support to you, whatever. These are all real conversations happening right up until they lost Game 5 of the finals. So Dam 1 obviously can't play Gen G. Far and away the worst people we could draw is obviously going to be FPX. The team that actually was pretty strong, but just didn't win the splits, and had Doin B MVP. Or was it actually TN MVP? I think it was TN MVP. Wait a minute, was Doin B actually MVP of spring this time? Am I hallucinating? Was it not? Spring MVP? This is a couple of years ago, so I'm going off memory here. Who was the spring MVP? Viper was the spring MVP on AG. Okay. Tian was the MVP. We got him. So obviously he's down 1. I have to avoid FPX. It's going to be a dream if I get Fnatic or 100 Thieves. I mean, by the way, I've told you how the pool system works. We're going to go down at this. You could also argue you could do pool 1 to pool 4 first, and we could look that way, couldn't we? Maybe I should even have done that. Maybe I should have done pool 1 to pool 4, then done pool 3 to pool 2, whatever. The point is, you get how the pool looks at the end. So Dam 1 gets, boom, straight away, hardest possible opponent. Literally the hardest opponent I can draw from pool 2. What did I do wrong? Nout. Just get the hardest opponent possible. So, okay, it's a hard group already. Let's hope it gets easier. Let's hope I get lucky. It requires fucking luck to make the groups fair, guys. So, pool 3, I obviously can't play T1. They're from my region. And I can't play RNG because at this point I've got FPX. I'm doing it as if we're going in the order like that. So, there's only 2 teams. It's Rogue and Team Liquid. I would argue I want to get Team Liquid here, because I just don't think they have like the overall strength that Rogue showed. Rogue was on the cusp of winning. Team Liquid was on the cusp of winning, but it was LCS, and LCS was a bit mucky that year for my money. I think Rogue's losing to like pretty good Mad Lions, although that was maybe a bit fluky. And then they lost to Fnatic in the lore, and the Mad Lions handled them in summer. So I don't really mind either, but obviously I need it to be... it doesn't matter for this one. It doesn't matter which of the two I get. It turns out I get Rogue, whatever. It is what it is. Turns out Rogue had a glow up at this tournament and they actually damaged me. So you go, although not if I'm down one. If you go to the last one, right, I obviously can't have Hanwether from my country. I can't have LNG because I already got FPX. So I can only have Cloud9 or Detonation Focus Me, right? Since you've already given me one of the hardest ones and like a not that bad one, but this is an insane pool, please make it Detonation Focus Me to make the group reasonable. Nope, you get Cloud9 with Perks and the Clutch Factor, which is in theory, when you consider there's only these two available, far and away the worst opponent to get. Miss me with, yeah, but Detonation Focus Me beat Cloud9 in a BO1 at fucking games. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? That's not how you seed tournaments, for fuck's sake. BO1's a different tournament. So you get Cloud9 and you end up as Dan 1 in a group of death. You get a group of death. You've got the hardest here. The second, you could argue the best out of the two that are available here, and then you've got the best out of the two that are available here. You couldn't get a harder group. And you know what? You got out, but I tell you what, FPX didn't. Call an ambulance. Not for me, for you. Then you go, Mad Lions should never be in a pool 1. That's fucking absurd. You should have like Gen G there, FPX there. But they're in there. So obviously for Mad Lions, this is the El Yoya humanoid version, and Kazi. This is where, as Mad Lions, obviously I can't have Fnatic, so my dream is 100 Thieves. It must be 100 Thieves if I'm going to have a chance. And didn't get him. I got Gen G. This isn't the Gen G with Chovy, by the way. This is the cleared BDD one. But this is a team that's like a bit strong team, still good players. I know some of them are a meme now at top lane, and Life's there. But look, anytime you've got Clid when he's still decent, BDD when he's pretty good, and Ruler when he's a monster, be fair. Right, that's a pretty hard one. I'd obviously much rather have 100 Thieves, but then again, why do I deserve the easy one? I shouldn't even be in this pool. So I've got a hard one, but maybe I should have. You could argue you could go the other way, and it's just Gen G getting Mad Lions there. Then you go to the third one. Right, since I can't have Rogue, I obviously want Team Liquid. Please make it Team Liquid, because these two are going to murder me. And Mad Lions got Team Liquid. There's the dream. That's the best possible one you could get. So far, you've got a hard one and an easy one. The easiest. In the fourth one, Pool 4, the worst one I can have, since I've already gotten Gen G, is I have a choice now out of Detonation Focus Me and LNG. If I get Detonation Focus Me, I am actually probably getting out of this group. I'm Mad Lions. Now, it turns out they did anyway, but they had to do the hard lifting. If I get LNG, a playing team, this isn't the one you're thinking of with Scout, this is the one again with Icon, then it's going to be much harder. And I get not the group of death, but the group of parity. The group where it's just, no one's a champion except Mad Lion. And it's just hard. It's just hard. So that ends up in the end, I got the hardest one here, I got the easiest one here, and then I got the hardest one here. Now look, again, I'm not, it shouldn't even be a top seed, but I'm just showing how it's unfair no matter what you do with their pool system, as Riot does it. I won't do the PSG Talon one, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? PSG Talon got Fnatic, Hanwha, RNG. So let's look. Fnatic's actually, in theory, one of the easier ones there. RNG's, in theory, one of the harder ones, but you didn't get T1. And Hanwha is easily the hardest at the end. So group of death for a favourite. Meanwhile, this one has no favourite in, and it's mad plausible. Look, if Fnatic had actually turned up with upset, they could have had upset potential. But for these two teams here, these aren't even teams winning the summer split, by the way, and they're just getting to have a chill group, while Damwon has like the nightmare group where every game can get in your ass. And if you're Gen G, admittedly you're not the elite team, you just get a group where every game's potentially hard. By the way, there's never going to be a Worlds I'm going to show you where it's vaguely fair. That's how shit this system is. But let's do it all for the sake of completion, and because I'm Thorin, the esports historian. So you go to 2020. This was obviously Le Couf year where we were online a lot, and it was in like dodgy circumstances in China with limited amount of fans. And if you remember, Top could have won both splits, but they managed to lose Spring in Game 5 from some Lamau play. And that was also when they used to have, they had Lorcan for most of the split. Then they got Jackie Love like in the latter few weeks. And then they leveled up massively. Carter was a little bit inty. But you look, pretty good lineup except for this absolute fucking bomb on support, as we all remember from this tournament. And you're playing against, in this tournament, you are actually a number one seed. The two number one seeds obviously are Dam1, since they came up, glowed up in the summer, where Flame even came and helped them, teach them how to play around some shot calling from top lane. And then Naguri got drafted back in and they were able to do well. The two best teams in theory are Dam1 and Top Esports. So I'll do Top Esports first. If I'm Top Esports, I can't play JD Gaming, who I played in 2 finals, because they're obviously the team from my country. I can't play Suning. They're also from my country. They actually fluked the regional. Maybe should have been a rookie team making it there. And I can play DRX, and they're easily the worst, because the only 2 teams I can play is Fnatic and DRX. This is where Fnatic is at the end of the run with Necklace, with Nemesis and Reckless and Selfmade. They were obviously like a good team, and they could still make the finals, and they could have even won actually both of them in this year, but they just didn't manage to. I really want Fnatic here. They're way better than getting DRX, because this is the DRX with Chovy Deft. Now, Kerry at the time wasn't as good as he was later. Pioshik was a meme, and Doran just wasn't like a strong player yet at this point in time. He's still a bit questionable. CV Max is coaching, who I've always rated. Please make it Fnatic if I am Top Esports. Let's go down. Well, you know it can't be Fnatic because they play them in the quarterfinals. They get DRX. Right, in theory, of the 2 teams I can play, that is the worst one to get. That's the team that's like a dark horse to go deep. They're not going to win Worlds, I don't think they could have with this team, but the dark horse to go deep. This is the one that Chovy was just dragging to finals, by the way, with Deft. I got the worst draw already as the number 1 team potentially in the tournament. Then in Pool 3, right, luckily there's no Chinese teams here. So maybe I can get an easy one, right? I have Gen G, who I can't get because I've got DRX already, so they're out. So I can only get, this is going to be great, guys, I'm going to get an easier opponent finally. I can only have Rogue, and this is the one where they still had Vander, where they was like a little bit sus at this point in time. And they had Finn Tomlin. That would be a great one to get. Obviously, my dream is get Matchy Esports, because at this point, unless it's got a Maple team, you always want to get the PCS team if available for major regions comparison. FlyQuest was, you might think a meme, but this was the year actually when they were in the 2 finals, and they could have won the second one against TSM. They didn't win the first one, and they got convincingly beaten by Cloud9. I obviously can't have Gen G, and so any of these in theory, but I would say the worst ones to get, I would say it's probably, in theory, Rogue, then FlyQuest, then Matchy. So who do I get? Does anyone remember? I get FlyQuest. Okay, that's fine. That's totally fine. That's okay. That's evened out a little bit how unfair this was. So then we'll go down. The last one, right, Matchy I didn't get, so I could have PSG Talon. They got River at the time, by the way. I've already got FlyQuest, so I can't have Team Liquid. I can't have LGD because they're from my region with Shea and Peanut. And Kramer used to be like a bit of a mad ADC who just went for all the fucking kills and damage. Obviously, Unicorn's Love is a dream. I don't care that some of the Chinese players were in that team that was like ANX that upset Rocks Tigers, yeah, and then absolutely did nothing against H2K in the playoffs. So this isn't all the way back in 2016 either. So the dream is to get Unicorns of Love. If not, then obviously PSG, but they're the 2 teams I can draw. I can only draw these 2 teams. Either way, I'm going to get an okay group, actually, it turns out. This is a rare time where one of us is getting a good okay group, but as I always show you, an okay group for me means someone else gets fucked, and they always do. So I get Unicorns of Love. So it actually turns into an okay group in the end. That's actually look, FlyQuest has upset potential, but more over DRX than me. Even the game that Top Esports did lose to FlyQuest, I think they already won the group, or they're already in playoffs at this point in time. That ends up being an okay group for Top Esports. I'm being fair and short, even the ones where it goes okay, because the point is, it can never be fair in totality overall. And don't go, life isn't fair for everyone. That's because in life, I can't control the metrics and set all the parameters. In this scenario, you can do that to a tournament. I've run tournaments, you bozos. So then Dam1 is the other clear favourite, if not the number 1 team. Let's see. If I'm Dam1, I can't get DRX, but I actually would want it over some of these other teams. Obviously, I need to get Fnatic. It's only going to be 2 LPL teams or Fnatic. Please give me Fnatic at this point in time. Suning's not the end of the world. They were a fluke. JD Gaming's a nightmare if I get them. Please do not give me JD Gaming, because that's easily the hardest team in this group. So you go down 1. I get JD Gaming. One of the favourites is always getting fucked. Have you noticed that in these tournaments? So you work all hard all year. The incentive structures, work hard and you'll get a top seed. Oh, and they'll use that seed to turn around and fuck me up my ass. Thank you, Riot Games. I love League of Legends. What an excellent game. So I've gotten the hardest opponent right out the gate. Then you go down. Obviously, in Pool 3, there are no more LPL teams, so I can't cross one of them off. I can't have Gen G because of my country. So I can only have Rogue, FlyQuest, Matchy. Well, you already know that it's not going to be FlyQuest because you know elsewhere what happens there, right? So if it's Rogue or Matchy, please make it Matchy. So you go down, it ain't Matchy, it's Rogue. So of the three teams I can have, I've got like second or third worst. So it's actually a little bit tricky. Not the end of the world, though. Obviously, Matchy would have made it a bit fairer, but it's getting tricky. I have to hope my Pool 4 team is legit and makes up for it, which, spoiler, let's see. Will it happen? Will it happen? Because in Pool 4, since I just got Rogue and JD, that means I can't have LGD because they're from the LPL. I can have Team Liquid, PSG, or Unicorns of Love. Now, obviously, I want it to be Unicorns of Love, but you know it isn't going to be that. It becomes PSG Talon. Now, in theory, that's maybe the second or third. That's not the end of the world, that one, actually. So in the end, your group ends up being okay, but you do get a team you should never be able to play. You should never be able to have JD Gaming in your group here as Dan one, but you get them. But at least in the end, it becomes an okay group again, which means if we've got okay groups, what's going to happen to the other groups, guys? Let's think about it. Let's think. What would happen to the other? If two groups are fair in the fucked up Riot system, what would happen to the other one? Would they be fair as well? Is that how fairness works? No, because the seeding system, pool system was never fair. So then we go to the other two teams. But obviously, even though I'm going to do these other two, right, except for maybe G2, because of how good they'd be in 2019, how good they seemed at the top, these teams should never be in Pool 1, especially TSM. That goes without saying. It should probably be JD Gaming and at the time maybe DRX. That's what you'd probably say. So actually, even if these teams get hard ones, that's sort of fair, but it's going to be the middle teams that get fucked. So if I'm G2, obviously I can't play Fnatic, so I would much rather out of these teams probably get Suning. They're the ones that crept out of their regional. That's the one, at least DRX was in a final. They're champions and finalists. I want to just get Suning, please. That's actually the best one I can get just because of how hard this is. I do get Suning. They end up winning the group in a tiebreaker, by the way. Hey, I can't know that. That's the best we can do. By the way, you could argue that's quite unfair that Suning has to necessarily play G2, but it depends. Again, the problem is G2 was a standout that were kind of an outlier for their region, weren't they? You can't judge LEC and LPL and that particular matchup. Then for the third one, I've already got Suning, and there's no LPL team. So again, I can have anyone, but I can't have Rogue because they're from my region. Obviously, the only one I want to avoid is Gen G. That's my nightmare. I end up getting Matchy Esports. The best possible for me, but why am I even allowed to get them? That should potentially be possible for top and down one, not me, but I get them. So actually, my group's shaping up pretty good right now. I've got like the worst LPL team as my one big team. I've got Matchy, and then the last one, you know what? Oh, wait, I don't have to cross my fingers because there are no Korean teams here, and I already have Suning. So that means I can't have LGD. So that means I have to have Team Liquid, PSG, or Unicorns of Love. Right, look, I'd rather have Unicorns of Love, but look, any of these will do. Oh, what's that? I get Team Liquid. Now, Team Liquid wasn't terrible. They did have tactical, but that's way better than a world where you could have had like a top team, like a Korean team. So G2, I know they're good, but this is 2020. They get a very easy group, and they don't even win it, by the way. Then the last one, obviously, is TSM. It was an absolute fluke they even won that split. It was bollocks. Double F should never have been in TSM. That was an insane conflict of interest for Alina. And so the hardest team I can get, there is no NA team. I can have any of these teams. So I'd rather not have JDG. We all know they don't get it. We know they don't get Suning because you've already seen it play out. You know they don't get DRX. You know they get Fnatic, don't you? So TSM gets the best possible draw as the weakest possible pool. One team. They get an already... By the way, what's hilarious is they don't even make out of this group. Then, in the third one, I've already gotten Fnatic, so I can't have Rogue. So at this point in time, I need to avoid Gen G. That's the hardest one I can get. It's way harder than FlyQuest and Matchy. And I get Gen G, who ends up winning the group, by the way, and ends up going to no, it's 2021, they went to semis. I guess they go to the round of 8 of this one. Yes, they lost to G2. Now, look, you might go, that means TSM got fucked. By Riot's rules, TSM got absolutely fucked by this group. But Riot's rules fucked the seeding and pools anyway, putting TSL in pool 1. Then in the last one, remember, I can't have, let me see, who did I get already? I already got, what was my team there? I got Fnatic, so I can't have, no, I can have everyone. There's no one I can't have. So the nightmare here, I've already had a nightmare for pool 3. The nightmare for pool 4, TSM actually had a lot of classic ones where this pool system fucked them, even though they never should have been in those placings. This is like season 5. I get LGD, the hardest possible one in theory. Because at least Peanut and She here are fucking experienced international players. No one knows what fucking Tactical and Broxer are going to do in Team Liquid. They have no coach. Lol. Oh, wait a minute. This was the year when he was the coach. Nah, my bad, actually. I guess he was the coach. I'm thinking of 2021 where... when Alfari's there, we got him up and out there. Back to what he does his best, content creation and casting. He is excellent at that. We got the Nightmare one. We got LGD. And so in the end, the joke was, it actually did end up being Fnatic actually made it out anyway. They did a good run. But it was actually Genji. It was everyone above TSM. TSM went 0-6 with a pool 1 seed. Yes, fuck TSM, but also fuck this system. 2019, remember we have Pool 1 and Pool 2 system now. So now it's going to be a nightmare because Pool 2 is even worse. Pool 2, remember, once you take out the region aversion where FPX can't play against RNG and IG, that does mean, though, that FPX, they can draw GAM or they can draw Griffin, who have some of the best players, it would end up of all time. You could already tell we're mega special. Or we could draw J-Team, or we could go and just draw Fnatic when they were good. This pool was the biggest nightmare in the history of Worlds. So FPX, this is the season where they had the glow up, obviously, and they won summer and Doinby. I think maybe that was the one where, I think he was MVP in spring, and they had like the record in spring of wins or whatever. Then they won in summer, and then go to Worlds as a number 1 seed potentially. It's obviously between them and SKT out of the teams that are here. This is 2019. That was the one where Faker had Clid and Khan and Teddy and Effort. So we'll do that, actually. I'll just show you the rosters because maybe you want to see the rosters as I'm talking so you remember, so I don't have to remind you. These were obviously also... so FPX, in this group here, they can't have IG and they can't have RNG. So let's hope we get GAM or J-Team. There's our dreams. FPX gets J-Team. That's perfect. That's actually a really good draw for us. One of the best we can get. Also, could have been plausible if you did the 116. That could be a team you could get. I don't know if they'd actually be 16th, but they could have been if you look at the other teams that are there. Maybe they would be. I guess they were the number 1. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't be, actually. To be fair, GAM would probably be there. But of them, that's still way better than any of these other good teams. So that's a good draw already for FPX. Then we can, in the third... we have another Pool 2 team. My bad. Second Pool 2 team. So obviously my dream would be GAM and J-Team. That would be insane. But obviously let's avoid European teams if possible and Griffin. What's that? We draw GAM Esports. We got the 2 worst teams in Pool 2 as the number 1 seed. Now, that's great for us, but that's also slightly unfair. Should you really get both of the worst teams if you're the one top? Because that means the other favourite, T1, can't get both the worst teams. They're going to have some competent teams, at least one competent team. So let's go. We'll go in second. So for the 4th one from Plains, we're still allowing, by the way, Koreans to go through fucking Plains. Well, we were anyway because we're going back in time. Obviously, the team I want to get on paper's Hong Kong Atsu, but I can't because I've already got J-Team. Now, of the other 2 teams, Clutch Gaming's from NA, Splices from EU, I'll be a hater and say I'd rather have Clutch Gaming because they're from NA, but to be fair, they do still have Hooney and Lyra Art Bombs. Splice, they were a little bit gimmicky, Splice time or whatever with the macro in the mid-game. Who did they end up getting? They end up getting Splice, but whatever. At that point, once this team's out, that's actually not even that bad. And it means I get a very easy group. There's actually one of the easiest groups probably ever. Not in terms of like they weren't a total bomb as the last one, but that's a pretty easy group. Who's the second best team that ends up being fucking Splice? On paper, Loco, he was an idiot for how he said it, but he wasn't wrong. It could have been J-Team if they'd have played up to par from what I heard from the people in the LMS. Like that was when they had 4-4, when he was really good. Then if we go to SKT, the other favourite, champions of summer. Is that right? Let me think, were they champions of summer? Wasn't that the year that they beat Genji in the first split and then Griffin in the second? I think so. This is 2019. So if we go to... Or maybe it was the other way around. Maybe it was Griffin both times. I forget. If we go to the last... T1... Right, I obviously can't play Griffin, so I need to avoid IG and RNG. This is a nightmare right now, if I can get either of these 2 teams in my group as T1. I obviously would myself want GAM or J-Team or HQ. Look, rather than the favourite one, I'll at least settle for Fnatic and Cloud, but I'd rather not have them. I am like a favourite, obviously. So T1 gets RNG. What am I talking about? Yes, they get RNG with Zhao Hu, Uzi I, Carson. These are some of the best players of all time, by the way. Ming, this is, on paper, this is a very good roster. They weren't that sick, this split. I think they made like, what, a final or something. But that's actually one of the hardest ones I can get. Like, this is the year when IG had to put in fucking Lian instead of Ning in the regionals, and they went through the regional and upset, like, I think that was the one where they beat Knights Top Esports, and they actually did pretty well in that one. I've got one of the hardest ones. You can argue T1 has just gotten the hardest opponent. By the way, also, a year earlier, they were the ones winning the LPL with a different top laner, and also they won MSI and they were going to go on the Golden Road. I've got the hardest possible. It's already unfair as fuck for me. They've got a super easy group. I've already got a nightmare one out the gate. What other Pool 2 team will I get? Obviously, I have to hope it's a team that's reasonable. I end up getting Fnatic, right? If you look at the other teams here, that's really unfair. I don't get GAM, I don't get J Team, I don't get HQ. That's really unfair. I've got a really hard team and a middle to top end team of this group. I'm already in a really unfair group as T1. For my last one, I can't have Damn One. I've already had Fnatic, so I can't have Splice, right? Just make it Hong Kong Attitude, please. If it's Clutch Gaming, my group actually is potentially harder. Hong Kong Attitude, I mean, you can debate this, but in theory, LMS is supposed to be weaker. T1 gets Clutch Gaming. Like, if you're T1, that's actually a very hard group. You've just got a very hard group. They've got a very easy group, and you've got a very hard group. You both get out of it, but already you see how fair the system is. Then we'll quickly do the others. G2 was obviously in their Smurf year. They're going for the Golden Road themselves. They won MSI. They won both AULCS/LEC, but it was LEC at that point in time. In Pool 2, I obviously want GAM and J-Team. I can't play against Fnatic. There's a lot of hard... It's basically already shitter teams or insanely hard teams for me at this point in time. So who do I get? Cloud9 gets Griffin and Cloud9. They get Griffin and Cloud9 are the two teams they get, right? Griffin, in theory, is one of the hardest teams I can get. The hardest team should be RNG and Griffin. I've got one of the hardest teams, even though, by the way, I'm in theory the number one team in the world. And then the other team I got was Hong Kong Attitude. So evened out, oh no, wait, look at the second one, Cloud9. So out of the other ones, Cloud9's still better than getting RNG. Remember, this system was so fucking stupid that Cloud9, G2, number one team in the world, winner of everything so far, including MSI, could have drawn from Pool 2, Griffin and RNG, and it'd be debatable if they're even going to make playoffs. That could have happened to them, because that's what this system allows, especially with the region aversion for teams from the same region. It means you can fuck other regions. Whatever you take from one, you give to another. Then on the last one, we did get Hong Kong Attitude. Out of the teams remaining, that's the easiest. So look, we got the easiest last team, but we've got two really hard other teams. And if you remember, it was tricky. It's just that Cloud ended up being a bit shit. They had the whole blabber, Svenska and swapping thing. Oh wait, what am I talking about? I was saying they got RNG and Griffin. No, they got Griffin and Cloud. They still got a hard one though. This is a team that has a chance to beat you. You should probably be better than them, but they've got a chance to upset you. So you didn't get the worst group. Actually, in the end, it ended up being an okay group for you. Why did I say RNG? I was thinking because they could have got RNG. Yeah, that's okay. Then we'll quickly do Team Liquid. You can imagine Team Liquid, it's inferred, must get a reasonable group out of this, even though, by the way, they should never be in this one. Yeah, this is 2019 Team Liquid that was second at MSI, and they had fucking championships in NA. But at the same time, it is nonsense, in my opinion, to have you above, like, RNG, for example, Griffin. I just think it is. I just think that's... you could maybe argue because of the MSI result, there could maybe be a factor, but I think iTest wouldn't check out the opposition you're playing in the LCS, wouldn't check out. If you'd have put them in the LPL, the LCK, would they do as well as Griffin or RNG? Probably not. That's why I say it's an unfair seeding system. Team Liquid, we obviously want the shitters too. Now, if you remember, do you remember what group they get in this one? You probably do. They get some pretty good teams. They get Damn One. Oh, wait a second. Wrong one, sorry. They get Invictus Gaming, which actually is a regional team. So actually we got somewhat lucky there, but still it's a team out of the big names that can be hard. It's got obviously some world champions on it. And we get AHQ. So we've got an easy Pool 2. Okay, we got a not even the hardest, but like a hard Pool 2 team. But then we also got an easy Pool 2 team of the ones that are there. Bear in mind, I didn't get GAM, and in theory, AHQ is actually weaker than Jet. So actually, I've actually done fairly well as TL. So the system even still says, you know what, take it up the arse on the last one. Because on the last one, you can't have Clutch, and you've already had... HQ. So you could have Splice or you could have Damwon. Obviously, Damwon's the hardest one. Damwon is who I end up getting, and the joke is Damwon wins the group, even though they're a playing team from Pool 3. Because that's how stupid these pool systems are. 2018 Worlds. Pool 2 is going to be a nightmare again because we're acting as if Fongvu Buffalo and Mad Team, you couldn't even name the 5 players. We're acting as if these 2 teams are as good. Now, I know you're all going to go, lol. Listen, we're talking about in the whole field. As IG, a team that's been right in position to win the LPL and looked mega in some of the regular splits. Gen.G, who is still, in theory, like they're the reigning world champions, even though they didn't have a good time in Korea. A Freak of Freaks was in a final in LCK and was looking pretty good. That was when like Thorin was like an MVP candidate. Cool Road found his form outside of Rocks. Spirit was pretty fucking good. Keen was a monster at this time. So I am hoping, obviously, if I'm a top team, I don't get some of these ones. But we're acting like they're equivalent, by the way. IG is, and Afrika are equivalent to Mad Team and Fongvu Buffaloes. Already, we know this is going to go badly. What's insane is I don't think there ever even was a Worlds where you got one group, one set of even randomised fair ones out of this pool system. I think every year there was a super easy group and a super hard group and then ones in the middle. So it's luck. So I'll show you the rosters. So we'll go with the number 1 team here. Number 1 team here at this point in time, I think should be RNG because obviously they won both LPL and they won MSI. Now look, they didn't beat KT Roast at MSI, they beat Longdew, and this is where KT had to swap out Pawn for UCal, so it was not the same level of super team, but then they won Summer in 5th game against Griffin. Choker versus Choker, Kong versus Kong. When Score finally won because he played another Kong. Therefore, also solidifying himself historically as a Kong, just like how Stork won, but he was a Kong because he beat Fantasy. Fantasy won because he beat Stork, and then Jangbi was a Kong and he won and is still a Kong because he beat Fantasy. Kongs versus Kongs. When 2 Kongs play, 1 Kong has to win. If you know what a Kong is, Google on my channel, Thorin Kong, and you'll find some videos about it. It's a Korean StarCraft server, people who always come second and maybe could have won. They have to be capable of winning, not just like they're worse and that's why they came second. So I'm going to say RNG is the number 1 seed here, the real number 1 seed here. So in Pool 2, I can't have IG, and that's it. So please give me Fongvu Buffalo or Mad Team. That would be really nice. It'd be really unfair to get Gen.G or Afrika, and it'd be like middling to get Team Liquid or Vitality, and then I'd say 100 Thieves is like, whatever, they're more towards the bottom end. So as RNG, I get Gen.G, one of the teams I want to avoid. Immediately, that's really bad. I can't have Afrika because I've got Gen.G now. So then the second worst team I can get at this point is going to be one of these 2, Liquid or Vitality. And that's indeed who I get. I get Vitality. And remember, this is the one where Vitality was doing upset, including against RNG. And this literally was something that was potentially putting RNG in a dodgy spot. So I've literally gotten 2 of the worst Pool 2 teams I can get relative to what I drew. So for the 4th one, just make my 4th team easy. Give me G-Rex. Give me G-Rex and we'll call it evens and say, fair enough, on you go. Because out of these teams, I can't have EDG, they're from my region. I just drew Vitality, so I can't have G2. Who, it's because they fucked up some of them in this position. Cloud9 or G-Rex are my choices here. Please just give me G-Rex. You've already given me too many good teams elsewhere. And I get, which was the one I'm looking at here, Cloud9 with Jensen, who is notorious for getting out of groups, by the way. Now, admittedly, they did badly in the play and barely made it through, and what happens in the end? It basically ends up being Gen.G that gets fucked out of this. But RNG even loses a game. Then if we do the other ones, obviously the other one will be KT Roster, the KT Super team. Right, again, you know the ones I want to avoid. I can't have Gen.G anyway. So I just want to avoid IG. That's the main one. After that, I'd obviously rather have the bad ones, but maybe IG and maybe Team Liquid, because at least they're the double champions, right? Let's just avoid those two. Oh, Afrika, I obviously need to avoid too. No, I can get... obviously, the 2 nightmares are Gen.G and Afrika. So let's go down. Wait there a second. KT draws a second. Team Liquid. That's actually one of the, like, once we get past, KT, this is why I'm doing it all from memory. KT can get IG, that's the one we have to, obviously you can't have a Freaka and Gen G. So basically if I just avoid IG, I'm already in a decent group. Just because 2 Korean teams are in this one, and there's only 1 Chinese one in this one. So that pool even made it easier for KT in theory. So KT gets Team Liquid, and they get Mad Team. In a group where, in theory, Mad Team is treated as being identical to IG, Gen G, and Afrika. So I actually get like a hard opponent in terms of like Western teams, but I also get a very easy team for Pool 2 and Mad. Then the last one, right, because I got Mad, I can't have G-Rex. So we know it's going to get hard now. And there's no Koreans, so I could have EDG. I could have just absolutely fucked me in the ass there. And I've already had Team Liquid, so I can't have Cloud9. So it's between EDG, who still has a scout, very good player. Claylove's still playing. iBoy was pretty good still. Mako's a mega player always. And then we have G2. So who do I end up getting? I get EDG. So the problem with these groups is you look at them and go, oh, KT and EDG, they get out. Well, they should be the 2 favourites. No, the way the seeding system worked said that actually like EDG was a worse team than TL because of how stupid the system is. And actually Mad Team, who gets no wins at all, they're a Pool 2 team, treated as if they're potentially the 5th best team in the tournament. Then the last one we'll do really quickly, Fnatic. This is when Soaz was there still, but Whipple was there as well. And obviously they end up playing Whipple most of the time. Reckless was having a tantrum. You'll find out about that more of that soon. And potentially, should I even say it? Potentially, this could have been the end of his career in Fnatic. I'll just say that. Let me just put that out there on the table. I'll get to it on the video. So for Fnatic, obviously I need to draw some easy people. I have to avoid everyone Asian. I don't want to get IG, Gen G, Freaks. This is so hard for me if I do. Fnatic draws IG. That's already really unfair. Except for the fact I'm talking about for a Pool 1 team. They shouldn't be in Pool 1. There's that. They should probably, for me, have been around like... oh no, this is the year where they were number 1. So maybe you could argue they should be the worst of the Pool 1 teams, which also means they shouldn't get IG. So okay, it's still fair. So, maybe they'd be like 5th. No, I think you wouldn't end up with them. I'd have to run a group simulation. So you get IG, and then who's the other one you get? You get 100 Thieves. This is the 100 Thieves where they made like the run through the gauntlet or whatever. Oh no, it's championship points got you there. Sorry, championship points got you there. So actually, the bullshit thing here is you got actually easier opponent because then they put in Rajcula and they fucked up their roster because they just used championship points to get there. So you got a hard one and an easy one. And then the last one, obviously, please make it G-Rex. Oh, look, it is G-Rex. I got the easiest team of them all, but I'm not even a number 1 or number 2 seed in theory. But I got the easiest one. So I end up actually with quite an easy group. Now, look, I have one that I might not win the group because IG's there, but I even end up winning the what do you call it? Tiebreaker against them. And it was because they put Duke in some of the games. So I win that group. And then the last one is obviously Flash Wolves. This is because Flash Wolves made playoffs or whatever at MSI, I'm going to guess. Meanwhile, NA didn't because this is the era when TSM the shit is in NA and Cloud9 was just a bit sus and Team Liquid was good, but that was the one where the fucking Ole benched himself and all that crap, if you remember that. So, and obviously this was, I've said enough shit there. If I'm LMS, I obviously need to avoid all the Korean and Chinese teams, but as you can see, I get Afrika. That's a hard team. I get G2, which is like, oh no, wait a second. The team I got from here was Fongvu Buffalo. As a shitter team in Pool 1, I get Fongvu Buffalo. How unfair. In theory, potentially the worst team in this group. And then it's rounded out, I get G2, which sort of evens it out, and that's why I don't get out the group. But by the way, this one went to a tiebreaker. I'm pretty sure. And there's a lot of people told me Flash Wolves because of the bot lane meta, people thought might not be as flipped. Maybe people thought Flash Wolves gets out over G2, but they didn't. Right, 2017 main event. Pool 2 nightmares would be that we're treating Gigabyte Marines as equally as good as SK Telecom when they've won the Spring Split MSI and finished second in summer. Samsung Galaxy, who was the regional team and were the finalists from the previous year. But if you remember, Samsung famously didn't used to make finals. RNG, this is before Uzi Eyes won, but they're already a good team still. They don't have Castle, they have MLXC, who was good. Let Me was the top lane, if you remember. Firefox, the notorious Firefox. So already it's a nightmare. We're treating GAM as equal to RNG, Samsung Galaxy, and SK Telecom. So we go to the favourites. The favourites at this point in time, the summer champions of LPL were EDG, but obviously most of the time people want to go with the champions of Korea, because this is back before the LPLs won the world. So people would say Longju of BDD, who's like still pretty inexperienced. Kaz is inexperienced. Khan is becoming a monster in this team after he played in the LPL and is the mega top lane. And they have the go even shot calling, team fighting bot lane of Praying Gorilla. So Longju is my number one team in the whole tournament. Let's see what group they get. Right, obviously over here, I need to avoid RNG. That'd be really unfair. I can't get Samsung and SKT, which helps me. This actually helps Korea again. Notice how the seeding system also would actually help Korea over LPL. Just because they're a stronger region, but actually in a way that was unfair. So I don't want to get RNG. That's the nightmare. I ideally want GAM. I ideally want AHQ. You could maybe argue... Maybe TSM. I guess TSM were the champions at this point in time. Immortals aren't that bad. Misfits, obviously. So who does Longju get? You remember. Longju gets Immortals from Pool 2. That's a good one. And they get... I'm having a hard time... Oh, it's because I've taken off the fucking logos. And they get Gigabyte Marines. Right, Immortals and Gigabyte Marines is two of the four worst teams in that group. Number one seed has gotten a very easy group so far. And what's our last one going to be for the fourth one? Right, obviously, since I've already had Immortals, so I can't have an NA team, and I obviously want it to be Fenerbahce. That would very much easily be the easiest one. But it could obviously at this point be Team WE, which would make it insanely hard. I can't have Cloud9, so it can only be these three. Fnatic would be the... here's the problem. Fnatic was supposed to be the second best EU team that just fucked up the playoffs. So in theory, I should try to get Fnatic over Team WE, but ideally I want Fenerbahce. Now, as you might know, it ends up being Fnatic. Probably the second worst of the options I had, or the worst. You can choose. And I do get out that group, but that group was trickier than you remember. That's how Immortals went there and why Fnatic had to do the miracle run from SOAS to get out. The other favourite would obviously have been EDG, where Scout was smurfing and was right at the top of his game. Claylove was still pretty good. Mouse was all right, even though you only ever remember him failing Worlds. He was someone who was winning LPL. iBoy was actually had come online as a strong ADC. Mako was always very good. And they had No Fear, former Rocks Tigers coach, as their coach. This is a real favourite to win Worlds. EDG obviously can't have RNG, but they can get Koreans and in theory TSM. We have to treat them as if they can be strong. Who does EDG get? They get SK Telecom. Immediately unfair as fuck. MSI champions, I get them as the winners of the LPL. Immediately right out of the gate. I also then get Cloud9. Wait there a second. Sorry, I get AHQ. So I get a really hard one, but I also get like a not the worst, but an easier one. Maybe that evens out. Then the fourth one, tell you what, if I get Fenerbahce, I've got a super easy group. Lol, fuck your face, but they get Cloud9. Now this is the one where, it's 2017, so this is where Cloud9 probably was the second best team over the year. Jensen was actually the best player for that year, in my opinion, and should have won the MVP in summer at minimum. So that's actually a harder fourth team out of the option that could be Fenerbahce. But you end up with a group where it's like, if you're EDG, yeah, you should probably beat Cloud9, but you'll probably lose to SKT, and actually you don't even end up getting out of this group because Cloud9 does miracle shit. I wrote that Substack article about it. You can go check it out if you pay $5 a month. Then we will do, obviously, out of these two, Flash Wolves far and away are my team that I'm considering the worst pool. So I'm going to go G2. This is the one where they won when they had Trick and Sven and Mithy, best in the West bot lane, and MVP Trick both times. Expecting Perk solo lanes. So obviously I can have anyone in this group. I can't have Misfits, the only one I can avoid. So I need to avoid these three. These three are death for me. G2 draws Samsung Galaxy and RNG. Right, this is why I will always tell people, but G2 was already ready to do a playoff run a la Season 8 in Season 7. Because remember, this is the year when not only did they win both the splits with the best in the West bot lane, but this is the one where Actually, wait a minute. Trick was the MVP in 2016. Okay, that's all good. I mean, Reckless was the summer MVP this time, for example. But I got the 2 hardest teams I can actually get, potentially. Yes, I got the 2 hardest teams I can get. I got the highest Korean seed, and then I got the highest Chinese seed in this group. And if you don't remember, G2 played really well against them and potentially could have gotten out. Actually, by the way, potentially over Samsung. They looked really good against them. It was a really close set of performances. It was really good. They could have, but they got fucked out of a Pool 1 team in this group. And then thankfully, they didn't get fucking Cloud9 as their 4th team, but they could have. Thankfully, they got Fenerbahce, which made it vaguely so that like everyone's going to beat Fenerbahce. But that means you fucked as a Pool 1 team, G2. And I think G2 would have been a playoff team. Remember, this is the year where they went to the finals of MSI and beat WE. I think in the playoffs, imagine they get the Samsung spot instead. I'll very quickly show you that. So they're down here against Longju. Look, I think they would have lost to Longju. I don't think they would have done some epic shit. But that would be interesting, potentially. Longju have inexperienced players. So that's a top 8 already. And if Longju wins, that means it's Longju against WE. I think Longju wins that. I think it's SKT Longju in the... So it'll be a repeat of summer finals. Maybe Longju actually wins this Worlds. Maybe BDUD wins Worlds. Interesting to think about. And then the last one we'll do Flash Wolves. They shouldn't even be in Pool 1, but let's look anyway. They still have Sword Art. They have Maple. They have Carso. All the boys are together. This is actually a pretty good lineup. They have Stake, who went to coach in the... This is one of the best Flash Wolves lineups they've had. Obviously, they can't have HQ, but that's it. Well, remember, they get that group there, don't they? Oh, no, what am I talking about? They get a group I haven't done yet. So they get TSM and Misfits, right? They're the worst Pool 1 team in theory, and they've actually gotten TSM, but that's not an elite Asian team, and Misfits from Europe. That's none of the worst teams, but you've got 2 middle teams. And then in the 4th one, the problem is you're going to get Team WE, aren't you? Well, in my opinion, the best of the Pool 3 teams. Shie, Condi was a decent jungler a lot of the time. Mystic was a monster, in my opinion, carry, and I thought she was always a solid playmaking. And 957 wasn't a bad top lane, he was just streaky. You got a really hard group there. And you know what? You went 1-5. You got fucked by it. Now, look, you didn't in the sense you shouldn't get anything out of being that Pool team, but you got the really hard, that was the group of parity. Hence why it's lol that TSM didn't get there, but also a Pool 1 team didn't fucking get there. This is, by the way, this is how stupid this tournament is. On paper, this is one of the craziest group stage upsets ever, according to Riot's system. The playing team won the group, and then a Pool 2 team, one of the not a top Pool 2 teams, got out. And the better Pool 2 team didn't on paper. 2016, there was no play-ins at this point in time. Pool 2, already you can spot it. What is AHQ doing there? That's mental. That's mental. AHQ is equal to World Champions, SKT, and Spring Split Champions and MSI Champions. They're equal to RNG. Always good with Zhao Hu and Uzi. In this case, they were very good in the MSI and they won Spring. Without Uzi, then they got Uzi in. They didn't win Summer, but they have Mata. They have Loop, who's a world champion. They're coached by Fly. This wasn't a bad team. So already you can see what a nightmare this group always is going to be because of the pool system. Then in Pool 1, right, the favourites in theory for this whole tournament are Rocks Tigers. They've won the Summer Split. Yes, they didn't have to beat T1 because KT did that for them. But they were second in Spring and they were first in Summer. Korea at the time of the Kings, this is 2016. They're the number 1 team of the world. So obviously in their group, the best teams they could draw is immediately HQ and maybe CLG, I'd argue, even though they had the MSI finals run and they won the Spring Split. That was all very close and by the summer they dropped off and they'd already had the issues. You get it. They got a rookie in Stixie, who he's playing fucking mid lane. They get G2 and CLG. Right? In theory, G2 are the double champions of Europe. Yes, they fucked up MSI. So you look, that they still have avoided anyone Chinese. They didn't get RNG and IME, that's good. They can't have SKT and Samsung Galaxy. So out of the teams that they can get, it's just these 6. They've gotten G2 and CLG. Look, the worst one's HQ. I didn't get that. I got some sort of middling ones. So that's actually worked out pretty well for me as a number 1 seed, which probably means EDG is going to get fucked because a number 1 seed always manages to get fucked if one gets an easy one. Then for the 4th seed, since I've already had Europe and North America, I can't have Splice or Cloud9, so I can only have a wild card. I'm actually going to get an easy group. I'm going to get one of the easier groups at Worlds. I'm going to get wildcard shitters, Albus Nox, who actually end up getting out amazingly. Or I'm going to get INTZ, who actually ends up beating EDG but doesn't get out of their group. I end up getting Albus Nox, and amazingly, Albus Nox even beats me in a game. We have a tiebreaker, and I end up having to win the group, but barely. But I got a very easy group. Then the other favourite would obviously be EDG, because they're the champions of the LPL. And this is when they have Deft is still a monster. Scout has joined. Coral 1 is still there, but they're using Mouse. They've got Claylove, Makeup. This is on paper, there's a pretty strong lineup. They should have a real chance to win Worlds. Obviously, I can't have RNG and IMA. I must avoid Samsung Galaxy and T1, especially T1. Please don't give me T1. I get H2K Gaming, who was second in Europe, mainly from points. They were in the finals. That's not the worst. That's better than getting the Koreans. And I get AHQ Gaming. So it's actually a rare time where the top 2 seeds didn't get fucked. They got actually quite reasonable groups. Maybe this is the one time ever it was vaguely fair. Look, it wouldn't be ever because you got Flashwolves 4th seed, because you've treated these teams like they're the same. But actually the 2 top seeds, at least for once, one top seed didn't get fucked. And then my 4th one is going to be INTZ. That's actually in theory one of the easier ones. Remember, in that scenario, I still could have got, I had H2K Gaming and AHQ, so I could have had Cloud9 still, which would have made it a harder group, but it didn't happen, luckily. Then we're just doing it as if it's top seeds here. Of these two, look, it's Season 6. I thought Season 6 was when this lineup was at its best, so I'm going to say they're better than Flash Wolves. It's probably debatable. I'd like to see them play, but I think they were better than Flash Wolves. They had the better potential, even though I believe in Maple more than I believe in Bjergsen and I believe in Carson similar. You get the point. This is when Sword Art was actually still sick mechanically. It wasn't washed at this point in time. So if I'm TSM, the only team I dodge is CLG. Obviously, please, I must stay away from these 4. If I get one of these 4, maybe I have a chance. If I get both of these 4, I'm fucked. If I get Korean and Chinese, I'm actually fucked. So let's go. You all know what happens. TSM gets fucked. They get Samsung Galaxy from Korea and they get RNG from LPL. Those are the second best Chinese team and the third best Korean team. Already that's unfair as fuck. Although, yes, I shouldn't be in here. I should probably have been like the 5th or 6th seed, whatever. But even so, this group is fucked. Then as the last one, well, you know what? You've given me really hard fucking teams. So can I have a break, please? Can I just have Albus Nox or INTZ and at least have a team I can beat? Or what's that? You're going to give me one of the hard, since I'm from NA, I can't have Cloud9. You're going to give me the hardest one. You're going to give me Splice, who was in a finals in summer. You're going to give me that team. Wait a minute, were they in, was it summer when they made the finals? Or am I thinking, fuck, was it summer they were in the finals? Yes, it was, wasn't it? Yes, because if they beat H2K, of course. Yes, with the Gangplank now one. I've got the hardest possible last one, which is why I famously wrote an article actually talking about people being unfair and how they treated TSM. Like they act, look, if you're as good as you thought you were, you still should have a chance to get out of this group, which they did, but you didn't do it in the end, did you? And obviously Doublelift did the fucking Victor Flash or whatever and got his shit pushed in by Crown. Then the last one, I'll do Flash Wolves quickly. Obviously my dream, I can't have HQ, is I want to get like G2, H2K or CLG. Flash Wolves gets SK Telecom. That's already a nightmare for me. Even though, yes, I have beaten them because I'm Flash Wolves and I've even beaten them at MSI, but whatever. That can't be how seeding works, guys, head to head. And I get IMA, who you don't remember as being any good, but they weren't terrible, even though you won't remember a lot of these players. Amazing J wasn't bad, actually. Athena was okay. It is what it is. And then the last seed, I get Cloud9, who was way harder than these other teams. And so it's actually IMA that ends up getting fucked on that one, potentially. Oh, and Flash Wolves doesn't get out again. Another pooled 1 seed doesn't even get out of the group. Because Cloud9 actually upset there again. Go check my article with Jensen doing some Smurf shit. There's only a few more to go. I won't be doing Season 1 because I don't call that Worlds, and neither did Riot. And spiritually, Season 2 is closer to the modern Worlds than Season 1 is closer than Season 2 or any other Worlds. And it wasn't called Worlds, so it's not Worlds. Don't give a fuck what you say. If that's Worlds, then count All-Stars 2014 as MSI, because it wasn't called MSI, but it was the same sort of format, even though you didn't win your region at a dedicated point in the split. Whoever was number one got to go as the number one seed, so it's kind of like MSI, but you don't count that as MSI, do you, you rats? So shut the fuck up. So obviously the hardest one right now is SKT, because they won both splits and they could have won MSI if they'd fielded Faker, but they came second to MSI. So we'll quickly look at the Pool 2 nightmare, which is that you're acting like AHQ and Flash Wolves are equally as good as Coup Tigers, KT Rolster, EDG and IG. That is fucking absurd. And you're seeing H2K and TSM are as good as those teams, by the way. So if we're SKT, we want to avoid, obviously we can't play KT, we can't play Coup Tigers, so we have to avoid EDG and IG, otherwise our group gets a bit harder, right? Do you know where this goes? SKT nearly always draws EDG in Worlds, if you remember. They draw EDG. That is so fucking unfair. They are the best, let me think, 2015. They were the best in spring, and then they sort of fucked up in summer because of like people like Imp smurfing, and they won MSI. So this is, in theory, I would still say the worst team on paper to get out of this group. And you're the best team in the tournament. You've already got the worst team in the team to get it, in the group to get. The second one we're going to get here is going to be H2K Gaming, which actually at this time, it's not the one with Forgiven, it's the one with the Yarn and Cassing bot lane. Lulex, the guy I used to make fun of as the dog, and the solo laners are pretty good. Best player in this team, by the way, is actually probably Odoam there, and then for experience reasons, shot calling Ryu. And then I also thought Cassing wasn't bad. So I got H2K Gaming and EDG. Like, look, that's not, I haven't got the worst ones, although debatable. Probably Flash Wolves should be the worst, even though they actually end up doing well at this tournament. But I got a very, very hard one. So let's hope my fourth team makes it fair, right? My fourth team's Bangkok Tigers. You would say Titans. That is probably, I mean, these two are the worst ones and they're maybe the worst. You got the worst one at the end, which sort of made the group manageable. It was more just, will you come first then? A little bit of upset potential. Could maybe have had an easier one. Then the other ones are going to be LGD won summer and came second in spring. They had that mega lineup of super hands players, but they weren't putting Flame in most of all. And obviously Acorn lost the first 3 games. I think they actually lost the first 4 games if you even had him when Flame comes in. And Godv, aka Wayless, aka Pain Evil, was a fucking pain in the arse, wasn't he? And he did way less than he thought he would. And God, did he fucking get the V. Fuck him. I don't know. Did what I could there. It wasn't a bad freestyle. So obviously LGD can't have EDG and IG. They have to avoid Coup Tigers and KT Rolster. If they get either of those, it's an unfair group. This is a tournament where the favourite gets an unfair potential winner of Worlds both times. Because you remember, they got KT, didn't they? I would say third best overall, even though they were second best coming out of summer. I always thought Coup was better. But even so, top 4 and 5 team at the tournament to win. You got them. By the way, that did end up fucking LGD. That's part of the reason they didn't get out. You got KT, and then you also got TSM, the champions of NA. Now look, of the other teams, this is the one obviously that got beaten by CLG in Madison Square Garden, but some of that was a draft gap. I think they're comparable to these teams, but still, you still consider TSM in theory better than sort of like AHQ, for example, and maybe H2K Gaming. So it sort of evens out a little bit there because there's no super shitter teams in here. This is actually an era when AHQ and Flash Wolves are real upset merchants, as you saw from Flash Wolves at this tournament. Then the last one, if I am LGD, is since I got KT, please, the only team I really can't play is Origin. They're easily the best. This team's better than some of these teams. They just had to only play one split of EULCS because they were coming from Challenger. Even then they made finals, but they didn't win it in Game 5, so they had to go through the regional. So, if not them, please give me... and ideally, I want Bangkok Titans or Pain. Third best is Cloud9, where High did the bullshit on Jungle and Incarnation just carried the fuck out of them, and Balls was like a bit of a meme with the worrying trend. And then Origin's obviously the one that I really don't want, and I get Origin. So LGD gets almost the hardest possible group. Almost. Like, by the way... Every one of LGD's opponents here was in the finals in summer. TSM was in the LCS finals. Origin was in the European finals. KT was in the summer finals in LCK. How fucking unfair. Even though, yes, I fuck it up and I don't win, but why would I ever be in this group as one of the top 2 teams to win the tournament? It's fucking absurd. So I've got an insanely unfair group. SKT's got an alright one. Then Fnatic, this is the time when they did a really good one. Summer, they were undefeated in the regular split. Then in the playoffs, it was only Soaz and the Gangplank draft priority that basically allowed them to get tested in the finals. Otherwise, they were murking H2K. They did beat Origin. I ideally want to just avoid everyone Korean and Chinese, don't I, please? They don't. They get IG and they get... who else did they get on this one? Let's have a look. AHQ. So, okay, I got a hard one in IG, but even then, number 3. And then I got AHQ, who, okay. I mean, I always liked the style of Flash Wolves internationally, but they were an upset potential, especially because Ziv was very strong and Anne was all right. And Westar actually was sort of like a bit dodging his champion pool, but he was mega aggressive, basically, if you remember. He was a kind of a highlight reel guy. So actually, we've got a fairly reasonable one, except that IG should win the group. They don't, of course. I'll show you that one day. They entered Rookie. It wasn't Rookie's fault. If you ever go see the scoreboards of the games, you'll see what I mean. So Fnatic actually gets a very reasonable group. Meanwhile, the top seeds are getting, like KT's getting fucked, LGD's getting fucked in the ass by the system. So Fnatic even gets to win their bloody group. And then CLG, this was obviously the one where they were good in spring, but then they fucked up in the playoffs. They came good in summer, and then now, in theory, they're number 1. They actually get a reasonable group. Look, they get a very hard one. They get KOO, second most Korean team. That's hard, but that's matched up with Flash Wolves. That's about the best I could hope for, aside from like H2K. And even then, I'd say Flash Wolves may be worse. I don't know. It's hard to know at the time. Maybe H2K was. So you got a hard and an easy. And then the last one, you got, in theory, a very easy one. You couldn't get Bangkok, but you got Pain. CLG and number 1 seed shouldn't have fucked this up. It's actually very embarrassing. They should have been getting out this group. Probably KOO first, CLG second, but Flash Wolves comes out first because Flash Wolves already is upsetting Koreans by upsetting the KOO Tigers, and they're beating CLG. Like you'll see, they went 1-1 with CLG, and then they 2-0. Literally, Flash Wolves 2-0 Rocks Tigers, number 1 team, number 2 team, number 3 team in Korea at the time. So that's an insanely easy group from CLG, a pool 1 team. Meanwhile, LGD gets a super hard one. Bollocks in it. This is the only other time we had the 4-team round robin groups. Other than that, it's going to go, well, except for season 2. Season 3 is the one with the giant groups. So if we go to season 4. Holy moly, is this actually really that long a video? Whatever, I like to do in-depth videos. It's who I am, mate. So the number 1 team here in the world is Samsung Blue. They're considered quite superior to LPL, even though I have thought Nami, if he'd played well, could have made ADG a world's winner, like 2nd or 3rd team. But whatever, you probably say 2 Korean teams are the top 2 at this time, blue and white. So Samsung Blue, obviously, let's look at the Pool 2 Nightmare. Pool 2 Nightmare is pretending that Taipei Assassins, AHQ, and maybe Cloud9, I may be being unfair on that one, these 2 are equal to Najin White Shield, Samsung White, and OMG and Star and Royal Cup. Like, this is a ridiculous one. So if I'm Samsung Blue, I can't play White Shield and White. I obviously need to avoid OMG and Star and Royal Club if I want an easy time. And I get OMG. Mega Veterans, really good top side. One of the best of the Pool 2 teams. My other Pool 2 team, does anyone remember? It was Fnatic, which isn't the worst, but it's a middling one. So already I've got a fairly hard one. Let's see what I get for the 4th one. For the 4th one, make it a fair group by giving me Kaboom or Dark Passage. Because by the way, Pool 3 is a nightmare. I should have done the Pool 3s and the other ones I've realised I didn't do, but I'm sort of telling you it now, aren't I? Right, LMQ absolutely could have won LCS, but they only played in the summer split, remember? SK Gaming was pretty good and could have won EU LCS, but just failed in the finals and the semis. They were the number 1 team in spring at one point in time. If I get either of these 2, it's really unfair. And I would say, of these 2, the more hands are on this one, but this is in theory the better one. We get the really unfair one, we get LMQ. So Blue actually gets a nightmare group. They get out of it, but they get a really, really hard group, even though on paper they're the number 1 team in the world. All these teams have upset potential. Then if we go to, I have to pretend Samsung White isn't the second best. I have to pretend they could be it. This system implies that Samsung White could actually be the, 12th best team in this tournament. That's what this pool system allows, a randomization to pretend Samsung White is 12th best team in the world at this tournament. So if I am EDG, double champions and winners of loads of tournaments in LPL, mega dominant at this point in time, although admittedly towards the end it got a bit tricky. I think they played like a regional for seeding or something here. I can't remember. I don't want to get anyone Korean, obviously. That's my number 1 goal. Don't get anyone Korean. I get Samsung White, Monty's favourite for the whole tournament. So that's immediately an incredibly hard opponent right out the gate. So since that's a Korean out the way, now I also need to get like a bad team to give me a chance. So maybe give me Taipei Assassins. I do get Taipei Assassins, who aren't even that bad at this time. Bebe's still there, but they're not great. They're probably the worst team in this group. I think HQ was a better team at the time. So in the end, that's all right, but it all depends. What's my last team going to be? Obviously, I need it to be Kaboom or Dark Passage. What am I talking about? I got the wrong one there. So you get AHQ, not Type SS. I got Dark Passage though, which means in the end my group's fine, even though I actually got an insanely hard group. But it means I'm probably going to get out of the group at least, right? Then if we go to these three teams, TSM barely won off that triple crit or whatever a wild turtle. I think Alliance was the best Western team at that point in time. Alliance, I need to avoid anyone Korean or Chinese. So please don't give me White Shield or White, Samsung White. Don't give me OMG or Star and Royal Club. I get White Shield and Cloud9. That's a hard team and a medium team. So already I've actually got a fairly hard one. But give me Kaboom or Dark Passage as the fourth one because I can have LMQ as the other one. Because if it's LMQ, I'm in a nightmare group where I might not even make it out. Look, they're not like a Chinese team, but they were a strong team in terms of like skills. I mean, remember, where is it? Oh, down here. Even they won games. They won a game off Fnatic and off OMG. They get Kaboom, which actually in the end makes it an all right group. But obviously, famous last words for them because it wasn't. Although I don't care what they say in interviews. They deny it. I've heard they were on the sauce the night before or partying and think they'd already made it. So you judge what you think about that. Then the last team's obviously TSM, who, look, I think Cloud9 was the best NA team, but they managed to fluke it through the playoffs with Lost Boy and Loco. Lord Loco at the time. I'm so legit, I even honor a bet years later when that time's passed, the statute of limitations. TSM, obviously, this is where they get the nightmare. No, actually, this is where they get the very good group. Because we fucked some other people, they get a very, very good group. So TSM, first things first in this area is just avoid Koreans. That's number one goal. They do. They don't get a Korean. Now, they get a Chinese team, and it's the worst of the two on paper, which is Star and Royal Club, who has they glow up with Uzi I at Worlds, who always gets better at Worlds. And then also, Insect Zero played way better in the summit, especially Insect, than they had any right doing. The idea someone called Cola went to the finals is fucking mental. You probably couldn't even name that Korn was the mid laner who was in the finals of this fucking Worlds. It wasn't Zhao who, mate. This was Starhorn Royal Club. So we get Starhorn Royal Club, which is pretty hard, but then we get SK Gaming. Oh, sorry, I'm doing this wrong. But we get Taipei Assassins. That's one of the easiest ones. We get the easiest one of the Chinese. In theory, we get the easiest of the LPL or LCK teams, and then we get the easiest team overall. That's a really good group already. The only thing that made it tricky, in theory, because by God, imagine if they'd gotten Kaboom or so, Dark Passage, that would be the piss easiest group of all time. It would only be Royal Club, and even then you might be potentially able to beat them or just come second easily. Thankfully, until we know what happened, they got SK Gaming, who you could argue is comparable to a TSM. They're pretty good, and they're maybe better than TPA. But luckily for them, Svenskeren went in solo queue and made his name something insulting and then DM'd someone about it. Well, they DM'd him or whatever, even though apparently he says he was not trying to be insulted. But get the point anyway. So half the game, Svenskeren comes out. So TSM gets potentially an easy chance to win the group, and they don't anyway. And SK Gaming beats him in that last one to make sure they don't. Bollocks, innit? Season 3 was where we're already doing shenanigans, seeding people. This is how bad the system used to be. Straight into the playoffs. We're making it so number one seed gets to the playoffs, but because there's 5 major regions, there can only be 4 number one seeds seeded in the playoffs. So one team from a major region doesn't get it, and we're going to base it off Chex Notes All-Stars performances, not even actual real teams, All-Stars. And Europe's the only one where everyone's speaking a second language in the team. NA are all speaking English. LMS are all speaking Mandarin, I'm assuming. China's speaking Mandarin, and Korea's speaking Korean. What the fuck is this exhibition thing? So as a result, Fnatic who wins both splits, and All-Stars was top 4, has to go into the group stage, along with second seeds, etc. Because remember, the system back then with championship points, it wasn't pools, was so fucked up that because Nigel White Shield won winter and then had top 8 in spring, and then did whatever in summer, they somehow got to be, because SKT didn't play it in winter, that's right. So SKT actually came out as like the second seed. Because there was only two, what am I talking about here? SKT came out as the third seed. Wait a minute, let me think how it goes. Let's just quickly look up here actually. We'll be able to explain that. Because what we'll do is go to Samsung Ozone. Yikes. It's because they fucking changed team, didn't they? I picked the wrong one to look at there. Let's look at SK Telecom, obviously. So we will look at 2013. So in 2013, Sword won the first one, and there was no KT Bullets is there, but they might not even be. I'm not sure what the eligibility was for them because they changed some players. And then obviously there was no SKT at that time with Faker, etc. Then in spring, Najin still made it to there, even though there was all that shenanigans going on with the last game that they might have thrown up there. You get what I'm talking about. They lost to Frost there. And then in summer, wait, so that's Sword, yeah. In summer, they didn't make it. This is the one where they bombed it. Black Sword there. So how did that work? Let's look at championship points. That's going to show us, I guess, circuit points. No, they still end up with the most. That was still enough to get most. So SKT came out as the third seed because they won the regional. And Ozone got championship points for winning spring and then having semis run in summer. So Korea was just such a nightmare. SKT was in the groups. But Fnatic's the only number one seed that had to go into the group stage. And if you look at the group they drew, right, in theory, there wasn't even a thing about avoiding regions here. So of all these teams, the worst ones I can possibly draw are OMG, who's really good, T1, Ozone, and Royal Club. But at the end, you're going to get two of both, aren't you? Royal Club's not going to be there. They're seeded. So if you don't know, I forgot the seeding into the playoffs. That's right. Let's do that. So Gamma Bears for winning LMS and because of the nonsense at All-Stars gets to be seeded into the playoffs while Fnatic chills in the groups and T1's in the groups and OMG's in the groups. By the way, it is people like Maple and that, but what a fucking disgrace. Then you have Black Sword just because of that nonsense where, like, even though they're a semi-dead team, we're not even in the same roster, they don't even have McNoon anymore. They just get to go to Worlds as number one seed and get to chill in top 8. And also, by the way, almost made it to the finals and probably would have won Worlds amazingly. So Prey could have been a champion. Nagne could have been a world champion. Then you had Royal Club, because they won the regional over OMG, get to be top 8, even though they've never won an LPL. And then you have Cloud9, because they won shitty LCS, gets to be number one and go to playoffs. So of the two groups, I would say Fnatic, in theory, got the easier one. Because they're a number one seed, so they should. But obviously, these are the two hardest teams you can get, along with Ozone. Ozone was a favourite. And obviously, Ozone shit the bed, and hence the Dade Award. SK Telecom actually got a vaguely tricky one. Because they got OMG, who's like, at the time, like, maybe the best Chinese team. You have Lemon Dogs had been the best European team until the playoff semis or whatever. And TSM was like, ended up being the second best NA team after the playoffs, even though it was Vulcan for most of the year. That's already a pretty tough group, but at the time, Koreans aren't going to lose to nobodies unless they're getting Dade Awards. You can get it too, Matter. You had some shit games there too, mate. Then we'll go quickly. The last one is Worlds 2. This is one where you seeded straight in the groups. And this time, incredibly, they drew straws for which major region doesn't get automatically seeded. And fucking Korea, in their first year where they're really good and have servers, they have to go in the group stage. Good one, Riot. Luckily, they murked their group. If you look in their group, the other teams here, by the way, is M5 won Europe and with in theory, the best team in the world, arguably, so they get seeded there. Taipei Assassins wins their region, so they get seeded there. But no one knew if their region was any good. Turned out it was this time. TSM won their region, so they got to be seeded there, which actually meant they had to play a number one seed in the first round. And then Team WE with their, I think it's the first tournament with the new lineup, got to be number one and got to get there. And by the way, got a very hard opponent. In the groups, in theory, the best teams here are Azubu Frost in this order. Azubu Frost, CLG EU, Najin Sword, and then IG. That's the way you would have gone. So wait a minute. Azubu Frost, CLG, Najin Sword. That's actually fair then. These two groups are fair. Like, you could argue overall, Azubu Frost got a harder group because they didn't get Saigon Jokers. But they're still favoured to get out. Maybe it's a bit bullshit. They got as a number 1 seed, they got the harder group. Maybe they should have had Saigon Jokers instead of CLG. No, they'd have to. Maybe the Worlds thing again. Maybe regions kept them apart. So as you can see, it's shit when Riot fucks with the system and doesn't use proper seeding, and every Worlds has some bullshit. If it's not even the groups, then it was just seeding people directly. So as usual, it's unfair again for Worlds. Everyone needs a support network, and mine is, of course, my Patreon community, the Scrominati, who, in many ways, they're the Sonny to my Cher, saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names: Ahmed Hadjou, Mac Pugnatio Rajcula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Thooorin, and you know it, Jerky's Minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are. Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Scluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.